Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. We're feeling good off a bye week. I'm coming down from my illness. I'm feeling healthy. I'm rested. I'm ready to go and put my butt on a couch for 3+ hours on Saturday. I'm prepared.
In a new job, you're finding the rhythm of everything.
Right,
you're
that's
getting
right.
the rhythm back now. Illness without, and it's a big time for you, man. This is a big week. The bye week could not have come at a better time for you.
The bye week was really an incredible time for me. I was listening to the House podcast. Didn't get through it all before we started recording on Tuesday morning. But you were saying the bye week was a great time to recharge, and I thought that was a very funny juxtaposition with Delvin, who's like, I had 3 TVs on watching college football.
Yeah. Well, how do you handle the bye week? Because for me, I do it as a way, because we do this podcast. Now we're doing 2 podcasts with To the House. It's a great time, but like and then I work for ESPN Richmond. So I'm surrounded by sports all of the time. And for the bye week, I was like, okay, I'm calling Mary Washington women's soccer on Saturday. I'm going to go hang out with my mom, with Eva's family up in Fredericksburg for the day. I'll kind of keep an eye on football, but I'm not going to go all in and just be plopped in front of a couch or plopped in front of a television on a couch. Would be really great television if I just watched a couch. But I took it as the opportunity just to decompress. What are you? Are you a Delvin type with 3 televisions in front of you, or are you a me type, or are you somewhere in the middle?
I wanted to watch the Friday games, so I watched UNLV Kansas because that was like the game of the weekend that I was most interested in, and it delivered big time.
Damn,
Saturday
Texas State gets a slight. That was the game of the week.
That was a Thursday one. I watched that one too. But then Saturday I did scoreboard watching, but we did some shopping in the Bethesda area and hung out. It was not a football day for me. The slate on Saturday was bad. Like good on Delvin for 3 screens. I don't know how you find 3 games to put on.
Well, he was watching UNC to get the film.
Yeah, that's true. That was a brutal game.
Especially that second half of that game. The only game that was fun was watching Charlotte nearly just completely implode. And then I'm deep into Charlotte Twitter, being a play-by-play guy for them for so long. Just like the algorithm gave me so many of their fan accounts, and watching them all just crumble in live just was amazing.
We'll get into that. That was a result.
All right. So before we get any further, we do got to let you guys know that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or you can unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. You also mentioned To the House.
Yeah.
You can catch that on the JMU Sports News Network right here in your podcast feed, or over on our YouTube, JMU Sports News YouTube. You got the full video podcast up over there, and the full audio podcast should be right below where you clicked on this one in the podcast feed. To the House, hosted by JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce. New episodes drop every Monday.
I like our podcast, but that's a hell of a pod, man. He's doing a great job for us. I'm excited to have him on board.
Likewise, and now the floor is yours, Bennett Conlon. You have a rant. You have to set the scene for how important this weekend is for the Sun Belt Conference.
Dude, I love the 12-team playoff. The 12-team playoff has me super amped because we're talking not just about like a New Year's Six Bowl. We're talking about a group of 5 team that's going to play in the college football playoff this year, which is very cool. JMU fans, I think we're tempering this down after beating Gardner-Webb with a goal line stand, and that is fair, right? I think it's fair to not want to talk college football playoff, but I think it's huge for the Sun Belt, which has dubbed itself as like the best conference in the group of 5. This is a massive week for the conference, largely because the other G5 conferences, excluding Conference USA, which is just fraudulent garbage.
It's FCS.
The other group of 5 conferences, very impressive to start this season. Like, very impressive. Shout out to the MAC. Northern Illinois has a road win against Notre Dame, and they have a game coming up against NC State, which looks bad, and Grayson McCall is banged up. Maybe winnable. They could have 2 Power 5 wins. Who knows? Or Power 4 wins, I guess. Would be Pac-12 becoming whatever it's becoming. You've also got Toledo in the MAC beat Mississippi State by like 24. It was like 41-17, I think, over the weekend. That's a big time win. They've got a nice chance to go undefeated now in the Power 4 win. UNLV has 2 Big 12 wins, 2 through 3 games. They beat Houston by 20. And then Houston the next week, I think they played Oklahoma within 4, and they seem like they're improving. That might look pretty good for UNLV at the end of the year. They also beat Kansas 23-20 due to some solid play, some solid defense, and incredible fumble luck. If you have not seen the play where the fumble's on the ground, I think everyone on Kansas's defense had a chance to touch the ball without a UNLV player even coming into the screen, and then UNLV recovered. One of the most absurd plays I've ever seen in the season. But that's a huge win. Boise State, if you put on the games, they're probably the best team in the group of 5, man. Like, Ashton Genty is disgusting at running back. Like a legitimate Heisman contender. They played Oregon within 3. Probably should have won the game. They gave up 2 kick return touchdowns in a 3-point loss on the road to Oregon, which is supposed to contend for the Big Ten. So they're absolutely in the mix. They already have a road win against Georgia Southern. So you've got the MAC. You've got the Mountain West. They're right there. The American, Memphis beat Florida State. They're undefeated. They seem like the team in the American that's going to have the best chance to make a run. So all of these conferences, again, outside of Conference USA, which is hot garbage, and UNLV, I mean, not UNLV, Liberty looks bad to start this season. Liberty has not looked good. We've got sirens outside. I don't know if you can hear that. That's because of how poorly Liberty has played. People are looking for Jamie Chadwell, trying to figure out what is going on. But the Sun Belt doesn't have those same wins. So this is a huge weekend. Georgia State beat Vanderbilt. I think we can all agree that Georgia State's not going to go to the college football playoff this year, right? It's a rebuilding year. Nice win over Vandy, but like, you're not a college football playoff contender. Jack, I think the college football playoff contenders coming into the year were who? Probably Texas State, App State,
And JMU is a dark horse.
and JMU. Yeah,
A
I
lot
think
of question marks. And Texas State blows their opportunity on Thursday.
really blew that, man. They only lost by 3. They had that game at multiple
They
times.
were up. They were up 21-7 and scored 21 unanswered points at one point in that game. It's a tough one you let slip out. Then you got App State getting boat raced by Clemson.
That's a bad look.
Like,
That's a bad look.
Didn't even look competitive in that. And that is supposed to be the best team in the East.
Right. So, like, App State could certainly get themselves back in it, but they're going to need some help because losing to Clemson 66-20 is bad. Like, Clemson had 35 after the first quarter. They could have stopped scoring and would have won by 2 touchdowns. That's brutal. You've got, you mentioned it, Texas State 31-28 loss to Arizona State at home in a game they absolutely could have won. They don't really have a ton of other opportunities. They beat up on UTSA, but UTSA might not be good. They look bad against Texas State. They also look bad against Texas. So we'll see what happens there. But who else is going to make those moves? You finally have a chance this weekend with some of the quote unquote like playoff contenders for the Sun Belt to make an impact. JMU is one of them. They play at North Carolina. They're about a 10.5 point underdog. It's a winnable game. We'll get into that. It would go a long way for the Sun Belt to get that win. If JMU wins it, they're immediately in college football playoff contention. Like, they'll be talked about as long as they're undefeated if they can get this one. It's a huge game. Big opportunity. Louisiana has a couple huge opportunities. They host a pretty good Tulane team this weekend. I think they're a 3-point underdog. And then they're going to play at Wake Forest next weekend, and that's a bad ACC team. So if you get both of those, you're 4-0 with a nice win over Tulane, and then you've also got a win over Wake Forest, an ACC team. You're undefeated, and you're in a chance where you can make a little bit of a run. And then Coastal Carolina is another game I've got circled this weekend. They're a 3-point home underdog to UVA. That's a winnable game. So they could get to 4-0, maybe put themselves in the mix. So those are 3 huge opportunities. And then you have a few that, like, if the Sun Belt could get it, it would be crazy, but also, like, these spreads are comical. So you've got Marshall, a 40-point road underdog to Ohio State. God help their souls. You've got Arkansas State, a 21.5 point underdog to Iowa State. I don't think Arkansas State's going to be a playoff contender, but their lone loss this year was a 10-point loss to Michigan. They did a really nice job scoring garbage time touchdowns to make that look better than it was. Good for them. And then you've got Georgia Southern's a 36-point dog to Ole Miss. I think their defense is going to have a really hard time in that one. And UL Monroe is only a 44.5-point dog to Texas. That can be brutal as well. So I don't think those games are going to go their way, but JMU, North Carolina, Coastal Virginia, Louisiana, Tulane. Sunbelt could use like at least 2 of those 3.
Not to get too into the numbers too, but for those huge spread games, it would be really nice if those teams kind of kept it
Yes.
a little competitive and they covered the spread so that, that helps the overall numbers for the FPI. It helps the overall conference look a little bit better. So you're expected to lose by 44 ULM, maybe lose by 24, which
Would
is
be
still an
massive, actually,
embarrassing
yes.
loss, but would be huge for the numbers.
And just to go back to those numbers, those FPI numbers, to prove that I'm not sort of a Sunbelt doomsday guy, ESPN's FPI gives a chance of making the playoff for every team in the country every week, and they update it. It's going to change a lot early in the season, but the top 5 teams, there's only 5 teams right now with a percentage in the group of 5, a percentage over 10%. Boise State, 24.3%, Memphis, 22, UNLV, 18, Northern Illinois, 14.2, and Toledo, 12.5. So for those keeping track, that's Mountain West, American, Mountain West, MAC. Coastal Carolina has the best chance right now of any Sunbelt team. They're 9th out of all the group of 5 teams with a 4.1% chance. So like they're right now, the Sunbelt is not in that early playoff picture. And that can change this weekend with some wins over good teams, and they have a chance to do it. So I think it's a massive weekend for the Sun Belt because the conference, I would argue, is the deepest group of 5, but they need somebody at the top to sort of take a stranglehold and be like, hey, I'm going to make a run at the playoff.
Yeah, those numbers will change drastically. I know you
Yes.
said it, but JMU was 14% after their win against Charlotte to make the playoff. Now they aren't even in the top 20 because of what happened with Gardner Webb. Now, if you go out and beat UNC by 2 touchdowns, all of a sudden you're probably in the top 5
Yes.
because of it can just swing so drastically. So right now, 9th is the best team in the Sun Belt. But if Coastal goes out and wins, and then JMU wins, and even Louisiana wins this weekend, all of a sudden you might have Coastal, JMU, Louisiana as like the 3rd, 4th, 5th teams in there. So keep an eye on that. It'll be really fun. But you did it well. I mean, this is a big weekend. Sunbelt hasn't had a lot of early opportunities against Power 4 teams this season. This is their big weekend against just a lot of Power 4 marquee teams, marquee conferences where they can get these big wins and really push themselves back into the forefront of the picture and be that preeminent group of 5 conference that the Sun Belt was last season and all the metrics said they were during the offseason.
And I think that like for the JMU specifically, last year JMU beat UVA. I think UVA ended with 3 wins, right? I think they were 3-9. North Carolina already has 3 wins. Like this is such a higher level. North Carolina is going to do work for you if you beat them, like for your playoff case. The rest of their schedule after JMU: Duke, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Florida State, Wake Forest, Boston College, NC State. None of those teams are good. Like it doesn't mean they're going to beat them all because I'm
The
not sure how
NC
good North
State
Carolina is.
disrespect, man.
NC State's been brutal to start the year.
I know.
So I mean, you look at it. That's what is that? How many games after 8 conference games? I mean, 4-4 is like the worst I feel like Carolina could do, even with quarterback issues. You're gonna have a 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 win North Carolina team this year. If you can beat them, that's gonna look really, really nice on the resume. They're probably gonna end the year, I think, as a top 50, top 60 kind of team in college football because Hampton's so good. They've got talent on defense, but they're beatable. The thing is, their schedule is so favorable that it's going to look nice if you can clip them.
I'm looking forward to it. Should be a
It's a big one.
really, really fun game. So let's dive into this game. We'll dive into the game itself in a little bit, but first, it is a bye week. You're coming off of a bye week here. UNC did play last week. They had a great second half against NC Central to pull out that win. Looked a little shaky, though, in the first half against NC Central's starter, but, I mean, North Carolina was always going to win that game. JMU had a bye week. I mean, there's a lot of questions going into it. And so what do we want to see out of the Dukes coming out of the bye week, going down to Chapel Hill and taking on the Tar Heels?
I want them to be competitive, man. Like that's the overarching thing is I think they should be competitive because it was a 1-score game between North Carolina and NC Central going into the fourth quarter. I think it was a one-score game between North Carolina and Charlotte going into the fourth, or at least in the second half. And then they beat Minnesota to open the year by 2 points in a dogfight. I just don't think Carolina should blow out JMU. The spread's right around 10 points, like we discussed. So I think JMU should hang in this game. And then the obvious things that I would like to see: faster offensive start would be huge. And I think that one of the keys, and you look at it for pretty much, I think every team every group of five team that's beaten a power four team this year has won or tied the turnover battle. That's an obvious one. And then also sort of that same recipe for success. You look at those games, a lot of those teams, those group of five teams, are kind of dominating time of possession and keeping the power four offense off the field. So I think that's another one. Like JMU has had too many 3-and-outs and short drives and slow starts. They got to hold on to the ball. They got to sustain some drives. They have to take care of the football. And if you do that, like, it would be shocking if this was not a winnable game in the fourth quarter. What are you looking for from the Dukes in this one?
I want to see their offense get going. We've heard them every game so far. In every game, 8 quarters of football? It's been 2 games, but each time in the post-game press conference, Bob Chesney has said, we made the necessary halftime adjustments and we got out there and they worked. I mean, against Charlotte, they looked a lot better in the second half. And in the second half against Gardner-Webb, you mentioned it, touchdown, field goal, end of game. Those were their 4 drives against Gardner-Webb. Hopefully you figure out what the adjustments are, before going into the game. You make those tweaks during the bye week, and then you can just attack the game going right into it. It's been quite infuriating, these slow starts. So I hope that they work that out. I'm excited to see what they have coming out of the bye, what that script is going to look like from Dean Kennedy, what Dean Kennedy has said to Alonza Barnett, because Barnett's got to use his legs a little bit more, maybe calm down a little bit when the game first starts. He's been sailing some passes early on in the game. Does settle in nicely. I'm not saying bench Barnett by any means, like some
There's a
people
lot
on
of
Twitter.
calls for that still on the internet.
There's too many.
Way too many.
I was calling for it in the Charlotte game. I was having some flashbacks to the Bucknell game, but then he settled in and he looked very good. And then the Gardner-Webb game, his receivers weren't helping him. But we'll get into Barnett in a little bit. I just want to see this offense start to put something together, whether it's a passing attack, whether it's a running attack, because their offense has been downright bad to start the season. According to Game on Paper, they are averaging negative 0.08 EPA per pass and negative 0.01 in EPA per rush. Never would I have expected their running game to be better than their passing game, but here we are. And those two things, UNC's defense, they've been susceptible to those deep passes, to those chunk plays, but overall, they've been holding opponents pretty well to some low EPA, some low expected points added. They rank 32nd in the nation in EPA allowed per pass and 20th in the nation in EPA allowed per rush. So Jamie's going to have their work cut out for him against a Power 4 team. Most of my questions and the things I want to see out of the bye are on the offensive side of the ball. How do you get out? How do you come out of the locker room to start that game? What do you look like? What do those first 15 to 20 scripted plays look like? And are you able to move the ball? Like, can you get some sort of rhythm going early?
Yeah, they got to go faster. Head coach Bob Chesney was saying that in his Monday press conference, that's been a big point of emphasis. He's kind of doing what he did in camp. A lot of positives about how the bye week was like phenomenal and the practices were great.
He
and
can't help himself, man.
I know he can't. He's feeling really confident. So it's kind of building my expectations up again, where like I do think this will be a competitive game, and I don't have expectations outside of that. Like, I would like them to keep it competitive. They lose by 7, win by 7. I think I'll probably come away with a very similar reaction, depending on how they do that. Right, if they're up 21-0 and lose by 7, it's going to look a little different than if they rally back or something. But this should be a competitive game. They should be able to get Barnett some things in rhythm. I think Tajee Hudson coming back could help because he's 6'4", a little bit harder to sail one over his head than maybe Yamir Knight because he's got like a foot on him. So I mean, that would be helpful. But the receivers got to step up. They got to come up with some plays that make sense early. And then when they have the plays, because they did have some plays designed nicely against Gardner-Webb, they got to execute a little bit more cleanly.
I would really love for Dean Kennedy just to have talked with Barnett this week and be like, run. If your first
Yeah,
read's not there, like early in the game, feel comfortable to just bring it down and run. We've seen him be very successful on the design QB runs. He hasn't scrambled at that high of a clip.
that's true.
So I would love to see him scramble because I think that adds just another dimension to it. The QB runs, the design QB runs are fantastic, and he shredded Charlotte's defense with those. But when you can add in an effective scramble game, I think that will really, really test a UNC defense that on paper has been very good, but has been susceptible to chunk plays specifically against FBS opponents.
Yeah, even North Carolina Central had a nice, really long pass in the first half. Like you can make some plays on him. Mac Brown was lamenting in his press conference, which I didn't listen to the whole thing. Bob Chesney did a 12-minute presser. Mac Brown did a 53-minute presser. What is the man talking about for an hour after an FCS game? God knows. But anyway, he talked for an hour and he was talking about how like he thought there were 3 turnovers they could have had that they didn't have. And he says they've been saying that every week, which to me, maybe North Carolina's not that great at forcing turnovers, right? If you're like, oh my God, we should have had 5 more over these 3 games. We didn't get any of them. Maybe that's a problem for them. So taking care of the ball is going to be big. I like the idea of getting Barnett going in the running game because he has been really solid as a runner. They got to figure something out offensively because I think they've got enough guys to be able to score in this game, but they clearly haven't clicked fully for a full 60 minutes yet this year.
And another thing I'm looking at, this may be way too far into the weeds, but third down and fourth down, being more successful on those plays. Against Charlotte,
Yeah.
you had 2 fourth downs within the 10 where you could have scored a touchdown and really just changed the complexion of that game early, and you failed on both of them. JMU's offense this season has a 31% success rate on third and fourth down. And all success rate is on third and fourth down is did you get the first?
Mm-hmm.
So they are getting the first on third and fourth down this season 31% of the time, 129th in the nation. That's not good. And they're going up against a UNC defense that these numbers are a little inflated because of their game against NC Central,
Yeah.
but you can't really say that because JMU also had an FCS opportunity and didn't inflate their numbers. So UNC's success rate on third and fourth down defensively ranks 18th in the country. And the average down in distance, or excuse me, the average third down distance for JMU's offense, 8.13 yards.
That's bad.
That means they're averaging 1 yard per play on first and second down. 1 yard on first down, another yard on second down, and it sets up a third and pass, a 3rd and 8. And this is a UNC defense that has held opponents to an average third down distance of 8.52, which is 20th in the nation. The game's going to come down to who wins the third down battle. That's what kept Gardner Webb in it. They had a horrible third down, but they were 4 for 6 on fourth. That's going to be the game. Can JMU's offense, 1, stay out of third and longs, and 2, convert third and fourth downs at a consistent clip?
Preach, man. It seems like the offense has been really good when they're on schedule, right? When they're not getting stuffed early. And then once something goes wrong on first down, sets up a second and long, they can't seem to really get out of it well. So I want to keep an eye on that too. Can they stay on schedule? And then if they get off schedule, let's say there's a false start on first down, you got 1st and 15. Can you adjust? Can you still make plays and generate first downs even when things aren't going your way on every play for second and third down? Seems like they've struggled with that through 2 games. Would like to see a little more progress there, especially coming out of a bye. You got a lot of time to prep for North Carolina. I don't think the NC Central film is changing anything drastically other than the fact that they've got 2 different quarterbacks working in, but neither of those guys are like ACC game changers, so it shouldn't change your game plan dramatically, in my opinion.
Yes. Quick injury update around this team. For Taji and Tyshawn Wyatt. Taji Hudson looking great in practice, but he has been all season and he has yet to take a snap. So Bob Chesney playing that one close to the vest. We'll see if Taji Hudson plays.
Play, man.
The interesting thing is he's been dressed for both games.
That's what I'm saying. Like if he doesn't play, I'm going to be very confused. Dressed for both games, practicing. This is one where, like, if you could have your tall, good receiver, this is the game. You probably don't even need him against Ball State or ULM, but like, could use him this week for sure.
Yeah, so he's practicing well. Iowa Dei, their quote unquote pacing him back for both of these guys. They won't know until we're recording this on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday if they're going to be how much of a workload they can take. Iowa Day either pacing him back is what I believe Bob Chesney said.
Yeah.
In the post-game press conference, Bob Chesney did say that this is an injury that Iowa Day has played with before, and it's not really an injury that you can get rid of, but it's rather how do you manage it, which is a little worrisome. But
Yeah, he was kind of didn't give a lot of information there, but saying that he's played with it before was interesting.
yeah, a little cagey about that one.
Yeah.
And then Tyshawn Wyatt, no update. No question was asked on Tyshawn Wyatt. The last time we heard he wasn't cleared for football activity is how Chesney made it sound.
That was like early bye week, or at least cleared for game activity, right? Because I think he's practicing in some capacity. That was no update there. That would be important, right? I think he was like a preseason all second team Sunbelt player at left tackle, so that would be helpful. He has a lot of experience playing against FBS competition. His backups do not. A couple of really good FCS guys would probably be helpful against a massive North Carolina front, but we'll see. I guess
We'll keep it locked to the two deep whenever that drops to see what the breakdown on that offensive line is. Another thing going back to what do I want to see out of the bye? Less rotations.
Here's a question for you. Do you they might have to on the offensive line if they're getting cooked? And they did a nice job in pass blocking throughout the season. Their pass blocking grades have been good. Run blocking a little inconsistent. But I don't at left tackle, especially if you don't have Wyatt. I wonder if they do try out Ramel, Simmons, some others, Luke Potma, maybe. I don't know. I agree they should probably rotate less. I'm just curious on the offensive line if somebody's getting beat, they might have to, because that's kind of what happened against Charlotte. Some of those rotations were like, oh, this isn't working the way we thought it was going to work.
We'll see.
Got to find a way to move the ball, man.
Yeah. Speaking of moving the ball, what are some keys? Well, we'll talk keys to beating UNC as a whole, but keys to Alonza Barnett having success against the Tar Heels. There's been a lot of calls for his job on Twitter. I mean, every time we post something about Alonza Barnett on our JMU Sports News Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, I can almost now guarantee, even JMU football Twitter, like at JMU football, I can guarantee if Barnett is in a video, that one of the first comments will be, put Morris in. Shout out JMU football. They've done a good job of hiding those comments or deleting them, especially on Instagram, but they're there. I see them. What does Barnett have to do to silence the quote unquote haters?
Have his receivers catch the ball when he throws it to him. I think the receivers have really not had a great start to the season. I think they've had too many drops. There's been some spots where maybe they could have made a guy miss and had a short play lead to a long play. But he's got to step up early in the game and hit open guys, because he's had some that have been drops, but also the throw was outside of their body. So their hands are on it, but he could have hit him in the chest and he didn't. So he can play a little better. I think using his legs will be really important in this one. And then somehow managing the nerves, because it does seem like he started slow. Really every time he started a game for JMU, 3 times, he started slow. 2 of them, he's grown into the game. 1 of them, they benched him, which they kind of had to, given playing UVA the next week. But look, I think if Dylan Morris was the guy, Dylan Morris would have been the guy. There's a reason that Alonza Barnett is still the starting quarterback. The coaching staff knows more than we do about that. I trust him. I love his traits, his arm strength, his running ability. Seems like a good leader. He's got a lot of really nice things going for him. He's just got to settle into the game, and he needs help from his receivers and running game. If they can get that going, use his legs, I think they're going to be fine in this game. But if they get into a spot where it's 3rd and 10, there aren't many quarterbacks in the country that are going to thrive 3rd and 10 against North Carolina's defense.
Okay, so you mentioned drops. While you were talking about that, I went to PFF. Shout out PFF.
Have you seen his adjusted completion percentage?
No, I'm not looking at that right now. We can talk about that in a second, because his drops, his receivers have not helped him in the least.
No.
Cam Ross, Logan Kyle, and Omarion Dollison have combined for all 4 of the team's drops this season. Cam Ross, Logan Kyle, and Omarion Dollison have each been targeted multiple times. They've been targeted in total 16 times. The three of them all have a drop grade of sub 50.
Yeah.
Not good.
Well, isn't that they've got 16 targets and 4 drops? That's like a 25% drop rate.
Yes.
That's not good.
That-
So Barnett's actual completion percentage is like 60%. He's had 4 drops, I think 4 batted balls, which is absurd. And maybe they work on like a pump fake in the bye week to avoid some of that stuff because my God. But his adjusted completion percentage is like 77.5%. Like he's been going to the right person a lot. And there have been instances where it's batted down or it's dropped and it's killing what would be, I think, a very impressive start to the season for Barnett. He's missed a couple of throws, but there's way more drops and batted passes than like bad throws.
77.8 adjusted completion percentage to be exact. He's averaging a 10.5 average depth of target, which is very good, which shows that Dean Kennedy's trying to push it down the field. Man, he's
doing some nice stuff.
He has a 7.5 big time throw percentage. He's only had 2 turnover worthy plays, which is 4% of his passes this season have been turnover worthy, which is very good. He's taking care of the football extremely well. I mean, a 7.5% big time throw percentage is very, very good. The one issue that he has in his game is a 50% pressure to sack ratio, which is not good, which means 50% of the time he gets pressured, he ends up being sacked.
You'd like to see him avoid a little more.
Especially for a guy who's so mobile.
Yeah, I do think right now in his game, he's a better design runner than he is a scrambler. So I'm hoping he can start to show some of that scrambling, like you mentioned earlier, because that would be valuable. But I mean, he's playing pretty well, and people are blaming him for, I think, stuff that's kind of been the receivers or a batted pass. And I don't know if you're blaming him for a batted pass. Also, Dylan Morris is like the same height. So I'm not sure that Dylan Morris with almost like a sidearm delivery is going to have fewer batted passes.
I agree. Some more interesting stats about Alonza Barnett, averaging a 2.67 time to throw, which is a very good number for his offensive line to have. Normally it's around 2.5 you want it to be. 2.67 is very good. Maybe wanted a little bit more, but I mean 2.67, nothing to sneeze at. He's only scrambled 3 times on 49 dropbacks this season. Would love to see that number go a little higher.
Some of that is like when I think the pass blocking grade is great in part because like the sacks have been like they miscommunicated and just straight up didn't block a guy.
Yeah.
So it's hard when it's like a free linebacker. You got to make it miss and then look downfield. I think he's probably still working on that. But if they can communicate a little better, avoid the free rushers, they could do some nice things. Now North Carolina's got some dudes on defense, and I imagine Jeff Collins is going to dial up some stuff to put Barnett under pressure. But he's making good throws. The receivers got to help him out a little more.
Yeah. All right. So UNC strengths. Is it Hampton and Hampton? Or is it Omarion and Hampton?
He's probably the best running back in college football, or one of the best.
He's so good, man. He's so freaking good.
Him and Genty at Boise State are at least 2 of my favorites. He's incredible, though, Hampton for North Carolina. Really hard to bring down, good speed. They need to tackle better. I wrote about this, one of the stories this week we have. But like the linebackers this year have not been that great for JMU, and their tackling grades are a little bit disappointing. I think Trent Hendrick and Taurus Jones are both below like a 40 grade in tackling on Pro Football Focus. You'd like to see those go up. I think those guys need to play a little better. Defensive line is going to need to have a nice game. And then guys like Jacob Thomas, Chris Sheeran, who have done a pretty nice job tackling this year. Those guys in the back end, Chauncey Logan, when they have a chance to make a tackle, they've got to do it. They've got to try to limit the explosive runs, because if you can slow down Hampton to a reasonable degree, I don't think North Carolina, which is running out Connor Harrell and Jacoby Criswell at quarterback, QB2 and QB3, because Max Johnson's out for the year with injury, neither of those guys have really looked incredible. I think they're going to make some mistakes in this game. So if you can keep Hampton to a normal performance, it's a winnable game. And I think JMU's defense can do it. But UNC's got a nice offensive line. They're big, and Hampton's very, very good. Lampkin on the offensive line, a Coastal Carolina transfer. I think he's like 5'11" at guard. He's their best lineman. It's not even close. Dude is phenomenal. So they're going to have their hands full with him. They like to run behind him.
Omarion Hampton, one of the best running backs in the nation. We've talked about it at nauseum, whether it's to the House podcast or this podcast. But I mean, he has a 156.6 elusive rating. He's had 20 MTFs. An MTF is a missed tackle forced after a rush, highest on the team by 13. He's had 13 more missed tackles than the next guy. But then, oh, by the way, Davion Gauss, their second string running
He's
back,
good.
he's taken 32 snaps this season, 23 attempts, averaging 6.3 yards per attempt. He has a better rushing grade than Omarion Hampton is, granted a smaller sample, but
Yeah.
he's also very good. He's not the best at making people miss, just 3.91 yards after contact.
That
Omarion
seems
Hampton,
nice. What is Hampton at?
4.7.
That's absurd.
So even if you're hitting Hampton 2 yards in the backfield, he's going to gain 2.7 yards.
That's like his average, right? He's hard to bring down, and they need to tackle at a really, really high rate because you watch him play, man. He just keeps finding ways to fall forward and get through contact. He's a special running back, but the rest of their team, they've got some nice individual talent. I don't know that the team is special, but I do think Hampton's good enough to carry them potentially to like 8 to 10 wins.
I'm just now going down a rabbit hole. I want to see how Omarion Hampton stacks up with elusiveness in the nation. Oh my God. Sorry. Gentry is 255.
He's on, but like if you haven't watched Ashton Genty run the ball yet, you got to watch him, man. I think he had 20 carries for like 200 some yards and 6 touchdowns against Georgia Southern, like just disgusting stats. But Hampton's up there, man. He's good.
Unfortunately, I don't know how to. Oh, minimum run attempts.
Yeah, it's always the minimums or really throw you off on PFF.
So let's go 50% of 68. Is that right?
If you do like the 20 or 50, it'll start to sort it. I don't fully understand what all that means, but
let's say of the people, let's say of the people who've rushed 25 times, which is roughly a game, right? A little more than a game
or two, yeah. Depends on the workload.
This is really great podcasting. Jonah Coleman, the halfback for Washington, he ranks first in the nation in elusiveness.
Very elusive.
Where are you? Hampton is 17th in the nation in elusive rating.
Yeah,
of those running backs in the nation with 25 or more rushing attempts.
He's elusive. He's physical. I mean, he's got it all. He's like a first round caliber NFL draft pick type of guy. I think so. Dating back to last year, he had 1,500 yards last year. He's got over 400 this year. So, I mean, he's basically like his last like 15 or so games, he has like 2,000 rushing yards.
That's pretty good, huh?
Yeah. I mean, he is unbelievably talented, physical, good. The linebackers for JMU are going to have to tackle really well. Defensive line is going to need to find a way to get a bit of a push. I think the edges are showing some nice stuff. Eric O'Neill, Kyrie Mans, but they could use a little bit of that from Emmanuel Bush, Chris Fitzgerald, Lockett.
You're naming the keys. You're naming the keys to beating UNC.
Turnover battle.
Win
is
it.
my big one. I think you got to win or tie that. I don't see JMU winning this one if they're like turning the ball over and failing to get turnovers.
But what if they're getting? I asked Delvin the same question. What if they're getting them off the field in a lot of 3 and outs, 6 and outs types of things? Not winning the turnover battle, but getting them off the field.
That would be. I mean, if you get them off the field, that's great. I just think it becomes an issue. Like if you get them off the field and then like Barnett throws 2 picks, I think it'll still end up killing you. It's one that I think it's important to. I think it's important to at least hang in that turnover battle. And I think they can because there were some throws that those UNC quarterbacks have made the last few weeks that are like, oh, that is stupid. They had one Criswell made, throws back across his body for like a 40-yard completion against NC Central. NC Central had a DB just like run by it. Like wasn't looking, just like ran across it and then fell over. Would like to think a JMU defensive back can make a play on that ball.
I'll even add to that. Win the turnover battle, but more importantly, win the points off of turnover battle.
That's a big one.
Because an interception that ends in no points is essentially just a punt.
Yeah, go get some scores.
Just get a feel. If you get the ball off a turnover, just get some points. Because at the end of the game, I think that's how you're going to win this game.
I also think in more of like an intangible one, them like believing they can win and playing like it from the start is going to be important. Like I want to see defensively them like flying around. Offensively, I want to see the offensive line look a little less timid. Chesney was talking about this in his press conference. He's like, we can't tackle soft or go up to Hampton and like not be committed to bringing him down. If you kind of go in there with like a haphazard, oh, let's see what happens. Like the man's going to run you over or make you miss in a bad way. And I would like to see JMU play with an effort that Chesney has talked about seeing throughout camp and all these things. Because they mentioned they're like, yeah, we were kind of loafing around against Gardner Webb. There's no loafing in this one. Like if you're loafing in your one game against a Power 4 team, you're going to get your butt whooped. So don't mess around. Because if they show up and play with the way they can, I kind of think they're going to win.
You do.
I think it's super winnable. I think the way they've played the last couple weeks has not been as bad as people think. And I think, to be honest with you, I think Carolina is going to overlook this one a little bit.
Okay. All right. Okay. Before we head to news or snooze, one last football headline to get out of the way. Tickets sold out for the Ball State game. News or snooze?
Family weekend,
an early
baby.
news or snooze?
I think what they were saying, varying degrees of like tickets were gone in this many minutes from what I've heard. We were hearing 3 minutes, under a minute, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. But they sold out very fast for the student tickets. And then I think they were already sold out for the rest of the tickets for this one. Family weekend always goes fast. I feel like they should do a $1 ticket. You get it for the second half and you can replace all the people who are going to leave type of thing. But
They got to go get their dinner reservations.
yeah, but it's going to be at like 4 or 3, but it's going to be sold out, which is a nice thing against a Ball State team that sucks.
Damn. Rude.
No, I just think it's impressive that they've sold out Gardner Webb and Ball State because neither of those games are like, wow.
So good.
Right.
All right. That brings us to news or snooze, everyone's favorite segment. Bennett will give 3 quotes and or storylines, and we'll see if they're newsworthy or snoozeworthy. News or snooze presented by Cinnamon Bear right across the street from Atlantic Union Bank Center over on that side of campus. A fantastic bakery and deli. Check it out the next time you're in Harrisonburg. Cinnamon Bear next to the AUBC.
Heck yes. I have 2 quotes today and then also a little stat. We're going to start stat because I've referenced it earlier, but I want to hear if it's news or snooze to you, given how quickly FPI can change. So the top team, as we mentioned, in FPI from the Sun Belt with a chance to make the playoff, Coastal Carolina right now at 4.1%. Is it news or snooze that FPI doesn't give any Sun Belt team more than a 5% chance of making the playoff entering week 4, I guess?
Snoozeworthy. Ding, snoozeworthy. It is because it can change so much. If Coastal goes out and beats UVA by 21 points this weekend, that's going to jump up 15 percentage points or something crazy. Now, if this was week 10 and the best Sun Belt team was 4.1% newsworthy. But this is what, week 4 we're going into? We haven't even got to conference play. There's so much change. And this is no slight to Northern Illinois, but they could fall on their faces in MAC play. Remember when Marshall went up to Notre Dame and beat them and then didn't even compete for the Sun Belt East?
Yeah.
Things can happen so quickly where right now those wins look great, but in just a few weeks.
I think I agree. We got to give it more time. The other thing too is like App State, Texas State aren't currently in the mix according to FPI, right? They're not right there. But like if they win out in Sun Belt play, you're 1 loss and you're Texas State and your 1 loss is to Arizona State by 3. You're going to be in the mix. You might need some help, but like you're going to be more than a 2% chance of getting in. So I think you're right on there. All right. Here's a quote from Bob Chesney. We're not going down there to try to play a close game. We're going down there to win a game. News or snooze?
Snooze.
Here's my question. He didn't have to say that.
I don't care if you say that. Like, it's like a coach saying, the bye week came at a perfect time. It's like a football player saying right when they report to camp, I've never been in the best shape. This is the best shape of my life. I'm in the best shape. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. Give us something else. Like, I
hear you. I just feel like he's saying stuff he doesn't need to. Like, if they do lay an egg, the way they, like him saying it was their Super Bowl for Gardner Webb. If you say, like, we're not going down there to play him close and you get smoked, like some of these quotes are going to look real bad.
he is really funny because he's like started to walk back some of the stuff where like it's a lot of new guys. There's a lot of inexperience. Like asked about like the slow starts to football games.
We're about to get to that.
Okay, then I won't spoil it. Snooze-worthy on this one.
All right, last quote. Last news or snooze. This is from Bob Chesney, the Monday press conference. Both the quotes are: "We have a lot of guys on this team who have not played meaningful snaps at the FBS level. A lot of guys on this team haven't been starters for multiple years. We don't have that luxury." That was Bob Chesney on the slow starts as the Dukes are kind of feeling it out. He also has said that he loves what the team did during the bye week. News or snooze, his comments about, I guess, the slow starts, kind of blaming that on some inexperience.
So like it would here's my take on it, which I know is what you're asking and what this whole podcast is. So I don't know why I said that. It would be snooze-worthy if all throughout the preseason and camp he was like, where you like, kind of took a page out of the Biff Poggi playbook. Remember when Biff was like, we may suck. Essentially, he was saying that going into the JMU game. Well, I'm not saying Chesney had to go that far, but you do have a ton of inexperienced players at this level. Not just inexperienced, but like you have to come in and you're building an entirely new coaching staff. So like it's new for you. You've never coached at the FBS level. Then not only that, you're putting together an entirely new staff. Then not only that, you have to bring in 60 plus new transfers. Then not only that, you have to teach them the JMU culture. Then you have to teach, like, there's so many things to it where if you in the camp time of year, the preseason was just like, you know, there's a lot of things that have to come together. I really like their work ethic. I really have liked what they've been doing in practice so far, but you know, it's a lot of new guys, you know, that type of thing, that type of messaging. And then he went and said this. I'd say it's snooze-worthy. But that's not what he did at camp. That's not what he was saying to us. That's not what this team is a brotherhood. This team goes to the pool together. This team likes each other. They play the name game, Bennett. I don't know if you knew this. They play the name game. All right. You were hyping up how together this team was. You were hyping up how they had just come together and they were playing out of their mind and they were great. And then you go out and play Charlotte. You know, it's a little slow of a start. That's fine. You have a good second half. Then you go and lay an egg against Gardner-Webb. And after the game, you're like, well, you know, it's going to be a slow process. These are a bunch of new guys coming together. That's not what you told me a month ago, man. I'm just holding you to your own words. So that makes this newsworthy.
Can I push back on some of his quotes too? Like the whole part where it's like he's saying how inexperienced they are. Everyone, so like 19 of the 22 guys on the offensive and defensive like starting unit are either juniors or seniors or grad students. I know what he's saying. Like, not a lot of guys have experience at the FBS level. It's like, right, except like, you know, Josh Toner, Tanner Morris, Cole Potts, Io, Cam Ross, Taji, Breon Penny, Dollison. Like, other than, you know, Chauncey Logan and Trent Hendrick and Emmanuel Bush and those guys and Lloyd Summerall, like none of them have played. Like, I don't understand what he. So I know he's saying like some of them haven't been the guy or whatever. Or maybe
Kyrie
not.
Mans, who was like the star at Maine at the FCS level,
Yeah.
and goes to Colorado with Coach Prime.
I don't love that excuse where, and I get what he's saying. I don't think he means it as an excuse. And there's going to be some time to gel. I don't think like, oh, we were only able to beat Gardner-Webb by 7 at home because like some of these guys aren't used to like being the man. Jacob Dobbs and Eric O'Neill have combined for 3 like FCS Conference Defensive Player of the Year awards. How is that not the man? And they were playing an FCS team. Like, why do you need FBS experience to play well against an FCS team? That doesn't make any sense at all to me. So I thought some of that felt a little cop-outy, especially after not saying any of this during the offseason. I think they can play a lot better. I get what he's saying, I guess, about the slow start, but I find it hard to believe that, like, Jacob Dobbs is feeling out the game because he doesn't have enough experience when he's, like, one of the most experienced players in college football and one of the best FCS players of the last, like, 3 years. I don't know, man. I didn't love that. I didn't love that quote.
I could have avoided all of this if you just tempered some expectations a month ago. Like you didn't have, like no one was like, No one was making you say that how great the team was looking in practice. And then it's just it's really irksome to be like, they're great. They play the name game. They went to this pool party. They're fantastic. They're coming together. They know each other. They're gelling. I've never seen a team, blah, 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 blah. And then you hit your first like bump in the road of the season and you're immediately like, I don't know what you guys expected. This is a new team. A lot of guys, a lot of new guys. They haven't played these types of roles before. Did you not prepare them for these roles? Were you playing the name game instead of like teaching them? I don't know how, you know what I mean? Like maybe I'm overreacting to
No,
it, but it's just,
I hear you. I do think they're going to come out and play well against UNC. I also am just confused because I thought during the offseason, like, and maybe we're being a little too harsh, but I thought during the offseason, like, the big thing about why they were going to click, and all the media storylines were like that they have clicked and they're a brotherhood. But the big thing was experience. Like, they not at JMU, but the whole thing was like they added this crazy level of experience in the portal, which they did. Like, Chris Fitzgerald has played a ton of football at Youngstown State. Jacob Dobbs played a ton of football at Holy Cross. Terrence Spence, a ton of football at Holy Cross. And then we're talking about like inexperience. Some of that is like self-inflicted or brought on by who you pick to start at a position. You know what I mean? Like they have Justin Eagles listed as the starting corner over Jordan Taylor, who started multiple years at D2. That's because you like Eagles' talent. You have Alonza Barnett over Dylan Morris, who had 15 career starts at the Power 5 level with a Pac-12 team, a Pac-12 honorable mention. Like Carter Sweezy starting at left guard over Josh Toner, who's played a ton. Because you like Sweezy. Like that was what's so confusing to me is it's like, oh, we don't think we have, that much experience. It's like there's actually a ton of games played on this roster. And I get the cohesion thing. I was just a little confused on the way it was worded, where it sounded like, oh, they don't have FBS level experience. It's like, well, is like 40 games played at the FCS not that should translate in my opinion. Like that's a lot of games played, man.
I mean, we, not to like point to the old guy and Kurt Signetti, but like the whole team that made the jump from the FCS to the FBS and, had a historically great
Right.
season, had a ton of like, you're talking to a fan base that 3 years ago was an FCS team moving to the FBS with all FCS players and dominated Middle Tennessee in the first game of the season, and then would go on to dominate nearly everyone when their quarterback was healthy.
Yeah.
It's also like, it's
Yeah, go ahead.
dismissive of the FCS play. Like there's just so many layers to it where it just feels dismissive of like, yeah, he played 4 seasons at Youngstown State, but Chris Fitzgerald's just not used to this.
And he's been
No,
playing great. That's what's so funny is like some of it's where like they don't have experience. Like, well, I think Dobbs has started to come on.
some of the best players on this team right now are the FCS transfers. Because you know why?
Yeah.
Because they've played a ton of snaps. Fitzgerald's a dog. Jacob Dobbs is a dog. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, not a lot of dogs right now. Not a lot of dogs right now.
Petaway's been one of the best guys, and he has limited experience. Like that's not an experience problem. You know what I mean? Like it just seemed like an execute. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel like that was really the problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, this turned into a really, really heated vent session here
Well,
about.
I'm interested to see how it plays out. I also didn't love the really any part of this quote, but where it says like where he said we don't have that luxury of having starters for multiple years. Like given the portal era, man, you might never have that. Like if you want to win at JMU, you're going to have to deal with some level of roster turnover because like one of Ole Miss's best receivers played at JMU. Indiana's defense is like largely made up of JMU guys. Like the best players in their defense have been like Kamara, Carpenter, Aiden Fisher, Jalen Walker, D'Angelo Pons. That's like half the defense. And then offensively, Surratt's been really nice. Lawton's doing a nice job in the backfield too. Like you're going to lose some guys to the portal realistically if you have elite level talent at the G5 level. So there's not, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of years where you have a JMU guy who stays with you for 4 years and is a top end talent. Like you're going to have to use the portal. You're going to have to make the most out of those inexperienced players before somebody tries to snatch them up. So I get what Chesney is saying about the slow starts. I also think that like it's probably reality for a little while for JMU, and you got to find a way to make it work rather than saying like, oh, it's going to take some, like you got to find a way to make it happen. That's just how it works with the G5.
Yeah, and a lot of my anger is like, not necessarily anger, it's more annoyance, but like a lot of it just stems from you could have tempered these expectations a month ago with what you said. And now you're like, what did you expect? I expected what you told me. Like, that's where my expectations are coming
Right.
from. It's from what you said a month ago. It's from what has been reported around this team. So all that to say, I think like you, they have a chance to go out against UNC and play extremely well. The bye week did come at a good point. You got to lick your wounds a little bit after that Gardner-Webb game. You figure it out. You move forward. Maybe that's the kick in the behind that they needed, and they'll move forward and start looking like what we were told they were looking like in the fall camp.
How do you see this one going, UNC? Before we get start moving along to some other sports, what's your prediction here?
I think UNC wins 35-24.
Okay. I'm gonna say the Dukes win this one 28-24, man. I think they're gonna shock some people, come out and play well. If they are not in the game in the fourth quarter, I'm gonna be very disappointed.
Okay, I wrote this down just so we can keep it because we're not doing Sunbelt Pick'em this year. I realize
we haven't
that.
done Sunbelt Pick'em yet. We forgot to do that, but it's a huge week for the Sunbelt. It's a huge week for JMU. I think it's a winnable game. I really do.
All right, I think it's winnable too, but it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, you're gonna have to play a lot better than they did against Gardner-Webb
Or Charlotte. If you play like how you played in the first 2 weeks of the season, you're not winning this game.
I like that second half against Charlotte, though.
Yes, but if you start as slow as you did,
gotta start fast. They say that's a point of emphasis, man. I'm trusting Chesney's track record of winning a bunch of games. I'm gonna say that he gets it going.
And this is also where he has thrived as a coach. Like as the underdog,
Yes.
finally, no one believes in us.
He needs that. Yeah, I think that helps him a little.
All those things. Quick listener questions, and then we'll go around JMU sports. Joe Boyd said, we'll be traveling to Chapel Hill for the game. Any insight on the JMU tailgate situation? Unfortunately, no. Bennett and I both are not attending this game. So
I don't, but I love Chapel Hill, man. That place is gorgeous. So I don't know what the situation is, but hang out in that town, man. It's fun.
Also, what play call do we think Dean is pulling out first in order to start fast?
Oh, that's a fun question.
Do you think it goes trick play to start the game, like a little flea flicker type action, or do you think it's just like a quick hitch that Alonza Barnett puts on the numbers?
That's what I tried to do against Gardner-Webb.
Or do you just do a quick pitch to George Pettaway and let his revenge game start early?
I kind of hope I honestly have no idea. I hope they dial up a trick play in the first quarter, whether it's a flea flicker or Hudson pass. I hope they come out firing with something.
Yeah. I think it'll be something, though, very bland. The first play of the game will be very bland.
It's possible.
Hand off up the middle for 2 yards.
They got to find a way to get a push up front, man, or it's going to be a long day.
Yeah. Tyler Reskovac, my boy Tyler, said conference realignment happening again. Any chance Sunbelt opens to add more people? If so, who would you like to be added?
So we got the Pac 12, which is 2, is growing to 8. So they're adding
growing to 6.
Growing to 6, and they need to grow to 8. So it's going to be Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State. Who was the other one?
I don't know.
It was Colorado State, I think. So that'll be your 6. They're going to grow. The Americans looking at adding Air Force, which would give them all 3 service academies, which would make sense, right? Kind of weird to have like Army and Navy and Air Force. It's just like chilling in this like
Mountain West.
Hodgepodge Mountain
Hey guys.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I don't know what the Sun Belt's going to do. Something to monitor. We've talked about this at length of wanting like ECU in the conference. I think that would be cool. They'd be a perfect fit in the East.
ECU would be
kind of cool.
ECU, Charlotte would be cool. I know we hate them, but Liberty would be so much fun.
Liberty from like an on the field perspective would be.
Yeah, I'm not talking cool. Off the field. Off the field, they're horrible people, and they don't deserve to be a university.
That's probably what's going to keep them out. But
but like on the field, just imagine the pure hate. Like that would become JMU's biggest rival. Like that.
A lot of people would hate them. Yeah, I think it would make for interesting matchup.
I mean, I think a lot of people hate them now, but
that's true.
I don't think unless you like go to Liberty, I don't think you like Liberty.
I think that's well said. Yeah.
So I think a lot of those East Coast teams in the American / Conference USA could be potential. Yeah.
I'm fascinated to see what happens with all that because it's more dominoes are going.
Caleb said, I'm traveling with the MRDs to Chapel Hill this weekend. Which UNC or JMU players should I watch out for to make the game-changing sort of plays? For UNC, I think it's Hampton.
Definitely Hampton.
For JMU, though, that's a good question. I think it's George Pettaway.
Pettaway revenge game would be cool. And I think also Pettaway's like existence on JMU's roster speaks to North Carolina's running back talent, that he's just like really good and he wasn't getting a chance to see the field. So it's like, oh God, they got some backs. Pettaway's a good one. I think I'm going to keep an eye on like those injured guys who might be coming back. So Hudson at receiver, maybe Wyatt at left tackle. Who's the other guy they were trying to bring back?
Adai.
Yeah. So those like Io and Hudson, if they can go out and make some impact, they're supposed to be two of like arguably the biggest playmakers in their injured, and arguably the best lineman or second best lineman hasn't played yet. Like those are three huge names. So I'm keeping an eye to see if at least one of them can go.
I don't think Wyatt's going. So hopefully one of Adai or Hudson can go. All right. Quickly around the JMU sports world, just kind of catching up as most programs are beginning conference play. Field hockey sitting at 3-1 on the season, a very strong start to the year. They're coming off of a 4-0 win. They'll begin the MAC era.
Maction.
We got some Maction on the field hockey field. They begin their MAC era on Friday up at Miami of Ohio. JMU women's soccer, 2-3-2, but they are coming off of a 2-0 win at ECU. They begin Sunbelt play, I believe, on Friday or Saturday.
Their non-conference was tough. They played some really good teams.
Yeah, and that's typically what women's soccer does, where they always are in the running to win the Sunbelt, or it was the CAA. Volleyball 5-3. They were 2-3 coming into the weekend, but they pick up a 3-2 win over UC San Diego, a 3-2 win over High Point, and then a 3-1 win over Western Michigan to sweep the weekend. Very big, very good stuff. Good for them to move to 5-3 on the year. And JMU men's soccer 2-3. However, their defense is one of the best in the nation. They're coming off of a 2-0 victory over Liberty. They will play Mount St. Mary's today, the day we're recording, and then Sunbelt play begins against UCF at home on Saturday, a 7:30 kick. So if you're in town for no, that's not family weekend. I messed up the timing. Saturday game, 7:30 p.m. There's no football happening in the city of Harrisonburg. Just some quick stats on men's soccer, though. Third in the nation in goals allowed. They average 0.4 goals per game. The only 2 goals they've allowed this season came in the same game against NC State. That was a 2-2 draw. They're 5th in shutout percentage. They've shut out opponents in 80% of their games, and they're 5th in the nation in save percentage at an 89.5% save percentage.
Heck yes.
All right. Anything else you got to add?
Men's golf had a...
how did I forget them?
They had from Teehee, Vaclav Teehee, I believe is how it's pronounced. They have the pronunciation in his bio for the last name and not the first, and that's sickening behavior by them. He had I believe it was a program record 8 under 62.
It was a program record.
62 is a nice round. I was looking at the leaderboard. Somebody else fired a 62 in that same tournament, which was funny because you look around like the other scores are guys like +1, -1, +2, and these two are just like, nah, we're firing 62s. So that was awesome. Shout out to Teehee, which is I like that name. You got T in your last name, Golf T. There's something there. There's something to build on there.
All right, you workshop that.
I will, because that was tough early, but that's 62, man. Great round for him. This golf podcast approves.
The golfer on this podcast approves. Have you ever shot a 62?
Maybe on like the front 9 or something, but never for a full round. It would have to be like a mini golf course.
Even then,
I'd be pretty pleased with a 72. I'm usually pretty pleased with an 82.
I'm pretty pleased with a 182.
That's right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Anything else you got to add?
No, I'm looking forward to this weekend, man. It's the big one for the Sun Belt. FPI's got me in shambles, so let's see if the boys can make something happen. Noon game, which is great news. Barnett is a early afternoon quarterback, as we've determined on this podcast. First chance this year finally to showcase not at night. He's not a nocturnal QB quite yet, but he's getting there.
For Bennett Conlin, for the non-nocturnal quarterbacks out there, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. This has been the JMU Sports News podcast presented by Bet Online. You can follow us on Twitter at JMU Sports News. Same thing on Instagram and Facebook. And we're at JMU Sports News on YouTube. You can check out this full video podcast over there. To the House is posted on the JMU Sports News YouTube. And you can check out our home on the web, www.jmusportsnews.com.